This meeting is being recorded.
Hello everyone, good morning. To 500 just 10. So in the last class, your last web development class, you did introduction to CSS, styling web pages. Today you are going to be doing CSS layouts, box model and Flexbox. And your instructor is going to be Mr. Ogunjiri Oluwashotun. So Mr. Shotun, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, good morning. You can hear me, just comment MarkTech in the chat. Can we all hear me? Okay. So today we'll be taking a very important topic. But before we move on, I hope we've all checked our MarkTech platforms. So there's been some major updates concerning the course contents and the resources, and also assignments for week 2 and week 3 has been uploaded. So let's check through the platform to download the resources and then complete the assignment. Okay. All right, so today we'll be looking at CSS layouts and we'll be talking about the box model and Flexbox. So once again, my name is Ogujiri Oluwashotun, and I'll be your facilitator for today's class. So the outline for today will be explaining the box model first, and then we'll move on to seeing what Flexbox is all about. Then we have a little practice session. So how it's going to be is that it's not going to be a code along session. It'll just be for us to brainstorm together. So when you guys will get a chance to code will be when you're on the MarkTech platform. So I'll upload the resource for practicing on the platform, so you guys can get it from there. Then you will watch the video and then practice on your own. But for this live session, we're going to be brainstorming together and seeing how we can achieve what we're going to be practicing. Okay. And then after practice, we'll conclude. All right. So if you want to code along, it's fine. So we'll be using VS Code as our coding environment. We also need to install some extensions. And I'm assuming we all have the basic knowledge of HTML and CSS. So all that being said, let's get straight into it. So what is the box model? So let's imagine we are doing things on our web page. You know, we can put a lot of things on our web pages, ranging from text to images to buttons to other resources that are available to put on the web page. Okay. So there's a way the browser needs to figure out the space each of these things takes, right? And how they fit together. So that's where the box model comes in. So the box model is simply explaining spacing of elements on the web page. And then understanding the box model is the first big step to controlling how things look on your web page. So by default, when we place resources on our web page, on our web pages, all of them take a default format. But we can now adjust that format with our knowledge of box models. Okay. So we should think of every HTML element as a box. So if we can't think of every HTML element as a box, then we might not be able to achieve that desired layout we want to achieve. Okay. I hope you're all following. So feel free to interject me if you're not following. All right. So what exactly is box model? All right. So the box model is not just a simple outline. It has 4 layers. So start from the inside out. So we'll be looking at these layers. So let's think of it as a picture framed on our wall. So can we all see this image? If you can see this image, just type image in the comments. I'm still waiting for our responses. Okay. So you can see the image. So in this picture, we have two images, right? So we have the one on the left and the one on the right. So we can see some arrows pointing to some areas in the picture. So the box model has 4 layers. The innermost layer is the content. So the content represents any resource or any image or any text that you place on the web page, right? And then we now have the padding. So the padding is the space in between the content and the border. So the border is that black line, and the padding is that gray space or that gray area in between the content and the border. So what the padding does is it separates the content from the border. So the border is the black line, it's just a line that surrounds the content. So by default, it will be very close to the content. Then if you don't add a padding to it or a space in between the content and the border, so you can actually control the space by adding the padding, right? And then lastly, we have the margin. So the margin is the space outside of the border that separates one element from the other element. So if you see two elements on a web page and they are kind of spaced, there's a space in between them, then that means there's a margin there. So these are the 4 layers. We have the content, we have the padding, we have the margin, and we have the border. So as a quick recap, the content is the innermost layer. That is the image or the text or the resource you place on your web page. And followed by the padding, which is the space between the content and the border. And then we have the border itself, which is just a line surrounding the contents. And then we have the margin, which is the outer space separating two web page elements from each other. All right. Did you get that? So let's move on. So in summary, so the content is the actual stuff inside the box. We should think about HTML elements as boxes. So everything on the web page is seen as boxes. So ranging from the text to your images to your buttons and all of that. So that's the actual content, right? Then we have the border. That is the line that goes around the padding and the content. It is the visible edge of the box if you choose to style it. So by default, the border does not appear unless you choose to add a CSS tag. So we'll be looking at all of that in a bit. Then we also have the padding. So the padding is the transparent space directly around the content, and it's in between the content and the border, right? So it pushes the content away from the box's border. Okay, I hope you're all following. Then lastly, we have the margin, which is the transparent space on the outside of the border that pushes the entire box away from other elements on the page. All right. So that wraps up the box model. Did we all get the box model? If we got the box model, let's type in box model. We got the explanation of the box model. Let's type in box model. All right, so we can move on. So now we'll come to Flexbox. So Flexbox is one of the major tools or major attributes used to structure web pages using CSS. So it's quite common because it's fast and easy to use, but it's not all the time that you use Flexbox. Okay, so it is just one of the ways to lay out your web page or your web elements on a web page. So what is Flexbox? So Flexbox is like giving special powers to a container or to your to a container element contained in the web page. All right. So it gives superpowers to this container so that it's easily able to manage the items inside of it. So we cannot just flex any element. We must always flex block elements. So block elements take up the width of the whole page. So flexing a container element, which is also a block element, gives you the ability to lay out the items inside of it. All right, so flex places elements in a container side by side by default. So when you set the display of a container to flex, it places them side by side. So by default, it places them on top of one another. But once you set the container to flex, you now see them side by side. Okay, so you can see the image on the left. You can see there's a flex container, and then we have 3 flex items inside. So setting the flex or the display to flex makes the flex direction to be set row wise and hence placing them side by side. All right. So we'll see this in a bit. So let's move on. So the flex box has 2 main elements. That is the flex container, that's the original box containing the elements you want to flex, and then the flex items. So I've labeled them the boss box and the workers. Okay, so let's look at the flex container now. So let's take a regular HTML element, can be a div, can be a section, can be anything at all, and you tell it, okay, you're a flex container. So how do we make a container, a flex container, right? We simply do this by setting the display to flex. So once you select the elements in using your CSS selector, you just use the display property and set the value to flex. So that will make the elements align side by side. Then we can now adjust the elements inside of this container as we like. So as soon as we do this, the direct children, that's the items inside of this container, become flexed. All right. So, and once they become flexed, they start listening to the flex containers instruction. Okay. Then we now move to the workers, that's the flex items. So the flex items are just the elements inside of the flex container, right? And by default, when you turn on the display flex, they all try to line up nicely in a row. So depending on the number of elements that we have. So quickly, let me switch to my coding environment. So I've created an HTML file already. So I'm going to call in the element abbreviation to create my HTML web page. So I'm just going to rename the title Live Practice. Okay. So I just want to show us the concept of Flexbox. So for me to initiate a Flexbox container, I need to have like a container element. So and this container element must be a block element. That means an element that spans through the whole width of the screen. So it must not be an inline element. You cannot flex an inline element. That's an element that only takes up the width of the content in it because it does not associate with width and height. So you cannot flex such an item. All right, so it must always be a block element. So I'm going to add a block element, that is a div element in this instance, and I'm going to put some elements inside it. So I've placed some elements inside. So we have live practice, and then we have 4 paragraphs, right? So I'm going to go live using the live server extension. So once you install it, you see it at the bottom right, most probably. All right, so when I click on go live, I should see the web page on my screen. So you can see by default, all items are placed on top of one another. I hope you are following. So they are placed on top of one another. That's the default orientation. So what if I wanted to place these elements side by side? Then what do I do? So all I need to do is to flex the container. So what I'll do is to apply a flex display to these container elements, these div container elements. So I'm going to go to my CSS. So, but before I do that, I need to link my CSS to this HTML sheet, right? And I need to do that in the head section. So I'm going to do link. I'm going to select the CSS type. I'm going to change the href, which is the path to the CSS file. So I'll just come to my CSS file, right click, and then copy the relative path. And then I'm going to paste it inside the href. All right, are we following? If you're following, just type flex. So, and I'm going to save it. So after saving, I'm now going to go to my CSS file, and then I need to select the element I want to apply the flex display to. So I'm going to use the div element selector. All right, so is either I use the tag, or I use a class, or I use an ID. All right, so if I'm using a class, I will have to use the dots. And if I'm using an ID, I have to use the hashtag. So, but I'm going to use the element name, which is the div. So I'll just select div in my CSS and open my brackets first. All right, and then I'll now apply display of flex, and I'll save. So once I save this, my Flexbox should kick in. So I'll go back to my browser, and you can see the elements are now side by side. So that's the concept of Flexbox. So it changes the orientation of elements from the traditional column to a row orientation. So they are placed side by side. Now we can adjust these elements as we want to, right? You can see some of them are not aligned, some are aligned. So we can also put spaces so that we can differentiate between them. All right. So hope we get the concept of Flexbox now. So it's just to place elements side by side, and then you can now adjust the elements based on how you want to. Okay. So now let's move to Flexbox properties. So Flexbox properties allows us to adjust these elements as we like. Okay. So the first one is the flex direction. So what the flex direction does is it tells us the direction in which the flex should go. Should it be a column? Should it be a row? But the default is a row, right? So once you say display flex, the orientation is row. the flex direction is row by default. Okay, but I cannot change the direction. So I can just type in flex direction and change it to column. All right. So somebody is saying, I don't understand. Okay. Probably if you take the courses on the MathTechie platform, you'll be able to follow up. But I don't think it's hard to understand. I'm just trying to place elements side by side on the web page and also change their layout, all right, using Flexbox. So to do that, once I set the display to flex, it places them side by side, right? And then I can now change the direction of that container. So, but once I set it to flex, it places them side by side. Yet, but if I don't want it to be side by side, I can still convert it to a column. So if I check my web page now, we'll see that the elements are now back to the default column, right? So, but the default is row, the value is row. So you don't need to add a flex direction of row when you set the display to flex, because automatically the flex direction is row. So once I save this and check again, you can see they are now side by side. So you don't need to apply this row direction, row flex direction when you set the display to flex, because that's the default value. All right. So let's just breeze through the major ones, and then we can read up on the other ones. So the align items, like I said in the last class, it used to align items vertically. So you can see the image on the right-hand side. So you can see flex stats, that's at the top of the flex. You can see center, that's at the center of the flex. So it aligns items vertically. I can see flex end as items at the end. So for instance, if I want to align these items to be at the same level, so you can see these paragraphs at the top, and this life practice is just on its own, somewhat in the middle. So if I want to place everything in the middle, I'll need to set the align items to center. That is aligning them vertically, okay? So let's check that in our code. So all I need to do is just to align the items center, and I save. Then when I go back to check it, you can see the items have been placed centrally now. So it's no more, they are no longer at the top as they were before. So these align items can take in several values depending on the use case you are trying to achieve. So it can be start. So you can use start or flex start. Anyone is fine. And then you can use flex end or end. So align the items vertically. So if you check that image in the slide, you can see where they are all aligned based on the values, on the properties. So align items. So flex start is always on top. Center will place there at the center. Flex end will place it at the end. Then stretch will just fill up from top to bottom. All right. Do you understand align items? If you understand, just type in flex start. If you get that, just type in flex start. So align items aligns your HTML elements vertically, while justify content now aligns your HTML items horizontally. All right. So one aligns vertically, one aligns horizontally. So if I want to, let's see how I can, okay, if I convert this to a column and I want to place them centrally. So the use case reverses. So let's say flex direction column. And I say flex align items center now. And then I go back to my web page. So you can see the use case is now reversed when you change the flex direction. So the default is that when the flex direction is set to row, the align items, we align items vertically, while the justify content, we align content horizontally. I hope we get it. So one, we align the align items, we align vertically, and justify content, we align horizontally. When the flex direction is set to row. But when the flex direction is set to column now, the align items will now align items horizontally, and the justify content will align items vertically. So please let's take note of that. So whenever you switch the flex direction, the use case changes for align items and justify content. But when the flex direction is set to row, what the justify content does is it aligns the items horizontally. While for align items, it aligns them vertically. But when I change it to column, this now becomes the horizontal one, and justify content becomes the vertical one. All right. So we can also align elements inside of the container using the align self or the align content. All right. So you just place that particular element inside of the container wherever you want it to. All right. So all of the others are on the MarkTechie platform. So in order to save time for practice, so I would like us to move fast. So I'll just briefly explain the rest, and then we'll move on to practice. So the flex order is just how you arrange items inside of the Flexbox. So for instance, I have 4 items inside of my HTML tag. So if I want this first P element to be the last, I can set the flex order to 4 or to 3. So it's just how you arrange these items inside of the Flexbox. All right. Then we also have flex grow. So you can make it such that these items can grow faster than the other items. So let's see that. I think I'll practicalize this. So I'm going to add an ID here. I'm going to add the ID of first paragraph. So I'm just going to call it first P. So I'll go back to my CSS, and then I'm going to remove the column, and then I'm going to add space in between now. So using the justify content. So just use to align items horizontally. So I can add a space between to add space in between these elements. So let's check what we have on our web page. So you can see these elements now are equally spaced. All right. So you have same amount of space in between these elements in the container. Are you following now? So that's the justify content, just align items horizontally. So you can have space evenly or space around. So when you say space evenly, it applies the same space in all through, right? So we can, so let's practice our knowledge of the box model here. So I'm going to inspect. So all of this just has to do with spacing. So we can see this is our flex container. So this dotted line is the border, right? And you can see there's a space. So if we are looking at the live practice now, the text of live practice is the content. And we can see there's some space outside. So that orange space is like a margin separating the content from other elements. But since we don't have other elements on top, so we can not really say separating it from another element on top, right? But that orange space or that orange color is margin. Now we can see we've not added any padding inside because there's no space in between the border and inside the content. All right, so you can see if you check down here, you can see the margin is still 0, the border is 0, then the padding is 0. That's because we've not added it. So we're using the default margin of the browser or the default spacing of the browser. So then the space between this first element, this first P element, and this H1 element, there's a space in between. So that's the margin between the two of them. So if I want to reduce the space between this welcome and the live practice now, I'll have to adjust the margin. All right, so I can say, okay, so I'm going to select the H1 element, that's the live practice, and reduce the space between H1 and P. So how I can do that is to first select the element. So say H1, then open my curly brackets and say the margin, let's say margin right. So that's the margin to the right, okay? And I'll say minus 20 pixels. So what I'm saying is I want the space between, so let me make it more pronounced. Let me increase it to 50. So what I'm doing, so you can see it's coming closer to this H1 element. So it's because I'm subtracting the margin from this, the margin in between the two elements that separates them. So I'm subtracting 50 pixels from the existing margin that is already there. So it's drawing closer to it. So I'm subtracting the margin of the right of this particular H1 element. I can also do that by subtracting the margin of this P1 element now, but it will be to the left. Do we get it now? So these spacings have directions. They have top, they have bottom, they have right, and they have left. And I also explained this in previous class too, right? So this is how we can initiate our knowledge of box models. Then if you want to see padding in action too, you can add a padding. So I'm going to add a padding to the H1 element. So I'm going to add a padding to all the sides. And I'll say 20 pixels. So the padding top, the padding bottom, padding right and left will be 20 pixels. So padding is the space in between. So you can see it adjusted a bit. So let's take a look. So you can see the purple area now. So that's like the padding. So if I click on it, you can see there's like a space in between the border and the content. So that is just practicing the box model knowledge, by the way. So what we really want to do is to, so we've seen space evenly. So we've added space to the flex container, right? So I'm just going to change this back to space between. And then you can see they are evenly spaced now. Okay. So I wanted to show us the flex grow. So if I want the H1 elements to either grow faster than other elements or shrink faster than other elements when you expand them or shrink the web page, all I need to do is to add the flex grow property or the flex shrink property. So I would just select the H1 elements and then add the flex grow. So I can say 4. So it will grow 4 times faster than other elements in the page. So while the others will be at 1, it will be at 4. So let's see that. So you can see this, the other elements are like clustered together because I set the flex grow to 4. So this flex container is like, this flex item is occupying like 4 times the space that the other elements are occupying. So if we check it, so you can see where it extends to. The life practice is like 4 times the width of one of these P elements or one of the other elements. So you can actually adjust the way they expand or the way they shrink. So if you want to adjust the way they expand, you use the flex grow property. And if you want to adjust the way they shrink, you use the flex shrink. All right. So if I check it now, you can see it goes back to normal. So what I can do is to adjust it. So I'm going to change my screen to a responsive size. I'm going to adjust that. So you can see it will shrink faster than the others. All right. So I don't know if we are following, but that's just the use of flex grow and flex shrink. So let's move back to the slides. So those are the basic properties. So now let's move on to practice. Okay. So I will upload the practice files on our MacTechie platform. All right. So for us to be able to also get some hands-on. So later today, let's check our MacTechie platform in the resources section to access this. Okay, but for now, what we are going to be building is a project I worked on some time ago. Just a very simple project. So I should have shared the Figma link because the design is from Figma, but the Figma link is not for me and it prohibits me sharing it. But what I'm going to do is we are going to just use my live demo. So I will include the link to the page inside of the resource folder so that you guys can just copy and access it. Right. So this is what we are going to be building, something like this. So for not found, then we add an image, then we have this text and all of that, right? So I'm going to go to the live demo. I'm going to open this live demo and we are going to replicate it. So this is what we are going to be building, all right? So let me convert it. So we're going to start from the mobile version first. So anytime you're trying to build a simple web page or anything sort of, is most advisable to start from the mobile version, then proceed to the desktop version. Okay. So when we get to responsive design, we'll see how that works. So I'm going to change this to maybe Galaxy Looks. So this is what we are going to be building. All right, so it will be something like this. I hope you can all see the screen. Can we all see the screen? You can see the screen, just type yes. So while I'm waiting for, so I'm going to be starting from scratch, building something like this. So I have all the resources downloaded already. So I'm going to also upload them. But in the meantime, we're going to be thinking together and see how to apply our knowledge of box models and Flexbox. Okay, so these are the images I'll be needing. I've placed them in the assets section. So I'm going to delete all this and start from scratch, okay? So I'll be checking the design and checking our web page too. So now it's blank. All right. So I can also change this to exactly note so that we're on the same page. So the first thing I need to do is to declare my document as an HTML document. So, but I'm using the Emmet extension. So what I need to do is to type in the Emmet abbreviation and then click on it. So you just type in exclamation mark and it declares your HTML document for you. So what I'm going to do is to change this to live practice. So if you want to code along, it's fine, because I understand some of us are already familiar with these things. But if you're just starting out, I would like you to listen and follow along and see how we apply these concepts. So if I'm not able to finish because of time, I'll give us to complete the rest as an assignment. Also, I also upload that on MarkTechie platform, okay? So I've changed my title to the live practice. So if I check my browser now, okay, maybe I have to go live again. So let me go live again. So I'll relaunch my live server. So you can see the title changes to live practice. So that's where the title is, right? And then I'll need to add a fab icon too. So what is a fab icon? You notice that so you can see this icon here. There's a Mozilla Firefox icon here. And there's this dev challenges fab icon here. So this project is from dev challenges. So you are required to upload a fab icon here. So I also need to upload a fab icon to my own web page, right? So how can I do that? So I'll go back to my HTML code. Now I'll need to use a link. So if you are trying to link an external resource to your HTML document, you need to use the link tag. So can we see this link fab icon? So I'm just going to click on it. All right. So I hope you're following. So it's just majorly for us to see how to apply all these things. So I want to assume that we've watched all the content from week 1 to week 3, at least. So if we have not done that, let's do that before we watch the live class session and actually practice, okay? So now, I don't need to change the type. I don't need to change the rel. What I'll need to adjust is the href. So the href is like the path to the image I want to put on the web page. Okay. So I'm going to delete what was there. So if I go to my assets folder, I can see this devchallenges.png. So you can see this is the image I want to link, all right? And then all I need to do is to copy the relative path. So always copy the relative path, please. Don't copy the path, okay? Because copying the path has its own issues. So because if you are copying from path, it will copy from the root of your operating system. So, and that might give you a bit of a challenge if it's not showing, okay? So what this is just saying is that this picture, this devchallenges.png is inside of the assets folder in my HTML, in my live practice folder. Okay, so let's save it and check whether it's showing. So you always have to check if it's showing. So can we see the image is already showing? So I've successfully added the image, okay? So let me change this to a mobile screen so that we can code along. So after adding the image, I think the next thing I need to do is to link, okay, let's populate the HTML first before we link the CSS. So like I said before, we have to see everything as boxes. So allow me to annotate my screen. So we can see this 404 not found, right? This is one box. Can we see the annotation on the screen? So don't mind my boxes, might not be too straight. So that was one box, right? Then we also have another box. So I think if you're able to do this, it will be easier for you. So you can just take any web page and practice segmenting them into boxes. Okay, let me undo that. So if we take a look at this, at the original design, if we go out of the annotation mode, so you can see this box is side by side, right? The image and then this. Are we following? Please, if you are following, just type yes. So let me design it from this place first. Let me clear all my drawings. All right. So let me annotate from the desktop view. So I hope you can see this. All right. So this is one box. We're starting from here to the top. So I'm just going to draw a line. So that's one box. So you notice that there's a space, like there's a space between this content and the next content. So if you want to add that space, you need to either add a margin or a padding. But the ideal thing is to add a margin because it separates the, it's just to separate two contents from one another, or from each other, okay? Then if you notice, we have like two boxes. So we have the whole box centrally like this. So it's like a whole box, but inside that box now, we now have two other boxes, so separated like this. Do you get me now? So we are practicing saying HTML elements as box. So this image is inside one box, and this other content is another box. So inside this other box now, we now have boxes that are separated. So we have box 1 inside box 2, and let's call it box 2.1, then box 2.2, and then box 2.3. So inside this second box, we now have 3 other boxes, and then we now have the image. So this display is flex, right? So they are placed side by side. That's why it's flex. Then I'll need to now structure it, because if we check the mobile view, so let me just clear that. If you check the mobile view, you will notice that this box, for instance, this box is in a vertical, it's column wise. Yet. So all we need to do is just to change the flex direction when we do that. So we need to put this image and this other box containing the content inside one container, and then flex them when we expand. So when we get to responsive design, we'll see how to do that. Okay. But for now, let's just place in the elements. So I'm going to go back to my coding environment. And the first thing we have on the design is the 404 not found. So you can see it has a different font and all of that. So we're going to cover that. So I'm going to show you how to add fonts too. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to add fonts, and let's see. So I hope I'm not too fast. I hope you are following. So the first thing is the 404 not found here. So I'm going to use an H2 element for that. So I'm just going to put H2 because it's like an header, right? And I'm going to say 404 not found. So this is a block element in the sense that it will expand the full width. So you can think of it as a container. If I check my own, so if I inspect this, let's say right click and then inspect. So if I inspect this, for instance, I'm able to see that it expands the full screen. So you can see the box is like occupying the full screen. So I don't need to do any other extra thing. All right. So it's occupying the full screen and the full width of the screen. And all I need to do is to continue adding the elements, the other elements. So this is like box 1, as I've explained before. So this is one box. We've added that. So let me show us how to add the fonts. So I think the font for this is in Consolata. So let me just check that. So I'll include all the fonts that we are meant to use too. Okay. So check. Just select that. So you can see the font family in Consolata and then monospace. So this in Consolata is a font that is gotten from Google Fonts. So while there's a comma there and this monospace, so this monospace is present on every system. So if this one does not load from the browser, then it will fall back to this monospace. Okay, so if I want to add fonts, I will just go to Google Fonts. We'll just search for Google Fonts. Okay, so you can access Google Fonts. And then so what I'll need to do is to search for fonts. And then I'll search for Inconsolata. So I have it here. All right. And then I can check how the font looks like. So all I need to do now is to click on Get Fonts. So once I click on it, so you can see Get Embed Code, download or see how to use, and all of that. Okay, so I'm going to click on Get Embed Code. So now it's either you add this font to your HTML or to your CSS. So if you want to add it to your HTML, you can see this link resource, right? Now I said if you want to add an external resource to your HTML document, you use the link. So you can simply copy the code from here. Google has made it easy for us. And then if you want to add it to your CSS, you can use this import, right? So, but I prefer using the import. So all you need to do is just to copy this import from your CSS. So I will advise that you use CSS rather than HTML so that your HTML code will be cleaner. So I'll copy that. So you don't need to copy the style tags if you're going to be using CSS. So just copy the import statement. All right. And I'm going to go back to my code. So I'm going to link my CSS again. How I'm going to do that is to use the link tag. So you see this link CSS, I'm going to click on it. And then I'm going to just type in the lifepract.css, lifepract.css, and save. All right. And then I'm going to now go to my CSS documents. And then, so just type in this code before you start coding. So this is a universal selector. So I'm going to reset all the default spaces that are present in my HTML document. So we call this a CSS reset. So I select all the elements in my HTML document, and then I give them the box ID of border box. Then I assign the margin to 0 and the padding to 0. So all the default spaces will be cleared. So if I go back to my browser and I check, so you can see the 404 not found is now sticking to the top. There's no extra or default space present again. All right. So I'll go back to my CSS. So the import statement I copied now, all import statements must go at the top of the HTML and the CSS document. So I'm just going to import this font from that place, all right? And then if I want to assign the font to the 404 not found, so I can see it's an H2 element, right? So I can just give this a class name of logo. So it's serving as the logo. And then I go back to my CSS file and then select that element using the class name. So I've given it the class name of logo. And then I now say font family. So another way you can also assign this. So everything is available on the Google Fonts section, or the segment rather. So you can see the font family in Consolata, then monospace. I need to do just to copy that. So Google Fonts makes it easy for us to assign these fonts. I'm just going to select that and go back to my HTML document and paste it in there. So when I save, I go back to the browser and check. So can we see the font has now changed? So you can now see 404 not found, right? So let me just comment the reset out so that we can have some default spacing. So can we see that? So 404 not found, the font style has changed, the font family has changed. So from the default to Inconsolata. So the reason why we have this comma here is that once this one does not load from Google, it will fall back to this one that is available on our system. So this monospace is present on all systems. So once this Inconsolata does not load, it will just fall back to this one. So this is like a backup font family. I hope you are following. If you are following, can we just comment yes? So while we are commenting, let's move on. So this is box 1, so we can just name this. So a good practice is to always comment your code. So for you to easily comment, you can use the // shortcut. So let me just do that again. So I will just press Ctrl// on my keyboard, and then it comments. So I can say logo section, just to make my code more readable and easier to understand. So I'll move to the other section. So I'm going to call this the main content, which is the image and the other text that we have. So what I'm going to do is to use a semantic HTML known as main. So main is also another container element, right? So if we look at this, the design, we'll notice that we have the image and we have this other text. So I have bad news for you. We are looking at this other text and this button. All right. So what I'm going to do is to create 2 extra boxes. So one for the image and one for the other content. All right. Inside of the main section. So we have like a big box, which is the main box, and then we have 2 extra boxes inside. All right. So that's how I'm going to put it. So I'm going to go back to my coding environment. So I've created the main box, which is the box I'm going to apply my Flex container to. So we now have 2 boxes inside. So I can say this is the image section. all right? And I'm going to put a div with a class of image. Okay, so how I can do that? I can use is either I do div, I create a div first and put class, then image, right? Or I use a VS Code abbreviation, an MS abbreviation. So I will just type in the div and I will just proceed to type in my class name with the dots. So I'll just say dot image. So I'm using dots because it's a class. So if I click on enter, you can see it creates the div with the class of image for me, right? So are we following? If we are following, let's just comment yes. Okay, so it creates the div with the class of image for me. All right, then I can now add my image. So how can we add images to our code or to our HTML documents? Can anybody tell me? Either from YouTube or which tag are we going to use to add an image? If we are going to add an image to our HTML document, which tag are we going to use? So I'm waiting for responses. Nobody is responding. Which tag are we going to use? So we're simply going to use the img tag, which stands for image, right? I'm going to click on enter. So the image tag has two attributes. So it has the source attributes, that's the part the image is coming from. And then it has the alt attributes. So alt text is used for accessibility. So if people cannot see or access the image, they're able to know what the image is about. So you add a text describing the image. Okay. So for the source now, I'm going to copy the relative part of my scarecrow.png and paste in the source. Okay. So let's see that first. So if I check so you can see the image is quite big, very big. All right. So we're going to adjust the image size with CSS later. Okay. And then for the alt image, I'm going to add scarecrow image and save. All right. So I've successfully added the image in the first container. All right. So let's go back to the design. And then in the second container, I have bad news for you. And then the page you're looking for might be removed and all of that. Okay. So we're going to add all of this in our second container. So I'm going to create a second div. So you can see I've commented it out as a text section. So it's good practice to always comment your code out so that you won't be lost. An ID for this. I'm just going to do hashtag and then I'm going to call it text section. So what this will do is it will create the element with an ID of text section. Okay. So the first one I have is an H2 element. All right. So it says, I have bad news for you. So let me just copy that. Can I copy? Let me just copy from here. So that is a bit faster. I'm just going to paste. So I have bad news for you. That's the first one. And then inside of the box elements too, you can see the page you're looking for might be removed or is temporarily unavailable. Let's copy that too and put it inside a P element. So because it's like a paragraph, so I'm going to paste that in. And then finally, I have the button. This is the back to home page, right? So I'm going to use a button element for that. And then, so I'm just going to specify button. Now copy the text inside. Let's go back to home page. It's not giving me the ability to copy, so I'll just type that out. Back to home page, all right? I'm going to save that. So if we check our own browser now, you can see all those elements as they have been added, all right? So they've been added, and we can now move further. So the last one is the footer. So I'm going to leave that to us as assignment to add the footer, all right, by ourselves. So I'm going to use a semantic HTML too. So footer section. So you add the footer with just your name. Okay, so I'm going to say paragraph. So let me say it's structured. Created by, so your name. Created by, so I'm going to put a comment here. Let me just put an hyphen and insert your name. So this will be task one of our assignments, all right? Insert your name here. So if you have a GitHub profile or that, you can also link it to. So how you can link this is to use the anchor tag or the anchor element. So you can just use an A tag. So I'm going to pass in hashtag because I have nothing to link it to. And then put it, okay, so everybody should use an anchor tag. So if you have a GitHub link, put your GitHub link in this hashtag. But if you don't have the GitHub link, you can just leave it as hashtag. So it will not link to anything, okay? So I'm going to insert my name here. So Rogerin, right, and save. So I can delete this. So this A tag is a span element. It does not contain the full width of the screen. So I can check my web page now. So you can see the link there. If I click on it, it will not link anywhere. All right, so, but if you have a link, maybe a GitHub link, or you have a portfolio, or any website you want to link it to, or any external resource, just put the link inside of this hashtag, where this hashtag is, rather. Just put it there. So if I have my own GitHub link, I'll just put www.github. So I hope you're following. So that's it. I'm going to leave it as a hashtag. So I'm going to upload the whole code later, like this. So we'll just pick up from where I stopped. All right, as an assignment. Then I also upload a practice file for those of us that want to start from scratch. So for the assignments, we won't be starting from scratch. We'll just be picking up from where I left off. Okay. So let's quickly dive into. So we've populated the web page with all the HTML elements that we're going to be needing. So the next thing now is to be styling these HTML elements. Okay. So how can we style this? So we need to style. Let me switch to a mobile view. So the default not found. That's good. So I'm going to go back to my CSS, and then I'm going to reactivate this style, this CSS reset, to clear all the default spacing. All right. So now there's no space in between these elements. So now you notice that there's a space between this 4 not found and this top border of the screen and the right border. So what I can do is to add a padding to the body elements. If you check our code, you will notice that this body is the one that encompasses all the HTML elements, all right? So if you want to add space to it, it will not be an outer space, it will be an inside space because all these other elements are inside it. So if I want to add this space now, what I will do is I'm going to add a padding to the body elements. So how do I do that? So I'm going to go to my CSS file. So let me just comment these two. CSS reset, all right. And then I'm going to say body style. So we have to style the body first. So add some default spaces. So I'm going to select the body tag itself. And then add, so if you have background color in the body, you can add it and all of that. So I'm going to add the padding. So there's a shortcut for padding. It has already been explained in the on the MacTechie platform. But for those that have not watched it, I'm going to be using padding top. I'm just going to say maybe 20 pixels. Then padding bottom 2, 20 pixels. So this is a long method, padding right. So I have to be adding padding to everything. So there's an error somewhere, okay? So always remember to close off your declarations with the semicolon. Okay, so let's check. You can see there's a little space now. So if I go back and comment the code, I'm going to comment the code so that it will not run. You will notice that there's no space at all to check. So you can see everything is glued to the top. But if I come back and now uncomment it, you can see there's now some space, all right? So let's check. So I'm going to be using this as my style guide. So how you can do that, just select any elements. So I'm going to check the body and then add it. So you can see margin 0. So you can see this padding. You see 20 pixels, 24 pixels, 5 pixels. So this is the shortcut I was talking about. So what this means is that the top is 20 pixels, the right and left are 24 pixels, and the bottom is 5 pixels, okay? So this is a shortcut for that. So, but we're not going to be using the shortcut. But if you have watched the course content on the MacTechie, then you should be familiar with that. Okay, so what else do we need to add? I don't think, so the background color is white, we don't need that. So what we need to do is now to give a space between this 4 not found and the image below. So if you check ours, the image is like still close to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the 4 not found. So if you go back to, so you must always refer to your HTML documents. So what I do most times is to split my screen. So I have HTML on one side and CSS on one side. So I'm able to easily select those elements, okay? So what I'm going to do is to select the 4 not found, that's the H2 inside the body now. and I'm going to separate it from this main section. So I want to add a space between H2 and main. Am I going to use padding or am I going to use margin? Please, let's comment. I want to separate H2 from main. You know, padding is to separate the border from the content, and margin is to separate two elements from each other. So in this case now, I'm trying to separate main from H2. Am I going to use the padding or the margin? So I'm waiting for a response. Nobody's saying anything. So somebody said margin, so that's correct. So we're going to use margin to separate the two elements. So that's H2 from main, right? So I've already selected the logo before. So all I'm going to do is now to select margin. So where do I want to add the margin? Is it to the top, to the bottom, to the right, or to the left? So I'm going to add the margin to the bottom. That means I want the space to be between this and this at the bottom side, okay? Because the image is not to the right, it's not to the left, and it's not to the top. The image is at the bottom, and that's where I want to add space to. So I'm going to add a space. I'm just going to say margin bottom and give it like 40 pixels, okay? And I'm going to save that, all right? Are we following? So you can see there's a bit of space now. So you can see this is the image, and there's a bit of space between the image and the H2 element now. All right. So we use margin to separate two elements. Okay. So the next thing to do now is to adjust the image size. So when we get to responsive design, we'll dive deeper. But why the image is large is because we have not set the width of the image. Okay. And we also need the image to be responsive. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this image, this div image. I'm going to give it a width of maybe 200 pixels or thereabout. Then I'm going to set this image that's inside to be 100%. That means this image is taking 100% of this container width. So as the image, this container expands, this image will expand along with it, all right? So if I want to select the div now, what I need to do is to select the main element first and then select the div element inside it, just to be specific, okay? So I'm going to go back to my CSS, and then I'm going to move to the main section now. So please, let's comment our code the way I'm doing. So main section. So what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to select the main tag first. Then I'm going to add dots. So if you check the right-hand side, you can see it as the class of image. So I'm referencing the image section inside of the main section. All right. So I'm going to give it the width, or let's use minimum width. So the minimum width. So I'm going to look at my screen size. So let's say the minimum width should be around 400 pixels. Or no, let's use maximum width so that it will not go more down. So it should be maximum width we are going to use. Maximum width of 400 pixels. So that's the container now. We are not styling the image yet. Okay. Maximum width of 400 pixels. And then we can leave the height as it is. Okay. So that's the container. So I'm going to name this the main section container. Container. All right. And And then I'm going to now style the image now. So the image itself, I'm going to select the image inside of the class. So I need to select the image inside of the image class and inside of the main class now. So I select the main tag first, followed by the class, that's the dot image. And then I'm going to select the image now. So I'm going to just give it the width of 100%, 100% and save. So let's check. So you can see our image is now occupying. So if I expand this, so it won't go more than 400 pixels because I've set it to, but if I keep shrinking it, you can see it shrinks along with the container. So that's part of responsive design. So it's advisable to always use your images, the particular image, just put it inside of, make the unit a responsive unit. So in this case, I'm using percentage, 100%, all right? Then make the container, maybe you can also make it responsive, but the image should occupy the width of the container so as to avoid responsiveness errors or responsiveness issues. So you can see the more I shrink the image, the more the image adjusts and conforms with it. So if I shrink it, you can see it shrinks with the container. Okay. So let's go. So what do I have to do again? So I think that's all about the image. So the next thing I need to do is to style the text. But before we start the text, we will notice that the desktop version is side by side, right? And the mobile version is just column. Abi? So if we change it to a desktop view, see side by side, and if we adjust it to a mobile view, it's column. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this main tag or this main container as a flexbox and change the direction to column, so that when we get to media queries in responsive design, we are going to change the orientation. But I'm just going to show us that here quickly, and then maybe we'll round up and complete the rest as an assignment. Okay. So I'm going to select the main tag. If I do main, so this is the main tag I'm selecting, main. I'm going to set the display to flex, display flex, all right. And then, so now we're going to move to the application of our Flexbox. So if I set the display as flex, if I go to my live practice, you will see that everything is side by side, right? So I need to change the orientation, the flex direction to column for it to be column-wise in the mobile view. All right. So I'm going to change that. So flex direction should be column. Okay. And then we have this. All right. Then I need to apply a space. You know, we have two containers. We go back to the code. This is the image section container and the text section container. So I need to apply a space in between them. So is either I use so you can align the items centrally. Okay. And then justify content. So I would like our feedback to see what I'm doing wrong, because I remember I mentioned it. So are you seeing nothing is happening? That's because I've changed the orientation to flex to column. So if I'm going to use something that will align the items or add space column wise, it's not going to work, okay? Because the align items is used for vertical when it aligns the items vertically when it's in the row, when it's the row value, and then when it is in a column value, it alters the function. All right, so we're rounding up soon. Let me just show us that in a few seconds. So what I can do is so this will be center. So I want them to be centrally aligned. Okay. So what I can do is instead of using the align items now, I'm just going to use the gap property. So I'm just going to add a gap of, let's say, 10%. So let's check now. There's still no gap. Let's see. So you have to adjust and adjust until you have a gap. So we have a little gap. So let me increase that. Let's just say 40 pixels for that. So yeah, we have this gap. All right. And then you can also see add the justify content too, although you won't see the effect. So it will have space in between them when the width is expanded to a row orientation. Okay. So I've added the gap and justify content in the mobile view. So there's a little gap between them. So, but what I want is when I expand the screen, right, I want it to flex, get. I want it to flex when I expand the screen. So how I can do that is to use a media query. So I'm just going to comment this below. So I'm going to say at media. So I already have a default code here. So when the minimum width, so I'm going to change this to minimum width. And so when the minimum width exceeds 768 pixels, okay? So we'll still cover this in the next class. It's just to show us the usefulness of Flexbox and to see its application. So I can set the main section that when it exceeds the 768 pixels width of the screen, all right, it should change the flex direction to row. So I'm just going to copy this and say the gap should be, okay, let's leave the gap at 40 pixels. So we don't need to change that. I'm just going to change the flex direction to row and save. So I'll go back to my code now and expand the screen. Let's see if it works. So it's not working. So I need to still add an, I think, screen size and screen. So let me type that out. So we have that. So let's check now. Okay, this is supposed to be mean width. So when the minimum width is 768 pixels, it should flex. So we can see it's flexing now. All right. So you can see once the screen size just exceeds or goes below 768, it goes back to column. And when it passes 768, it goes back to row. So that's one major application of Flexbox, right? So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to place all elements in the body section in the center, because you can see it's not really in the center, but I want them to be in the center, okay? So what I'm going to do is to also convert the body to a flex box. So I'm going to do a display flex. So you might have heard of this joke, how to center a div, okay? So if you want to place elements centrally, so you just say align display flex, align item center, and justify content center using Flexbox only. All right. So that's how to center elements in a container. So let's check if it works. So I need to change the direction too. I need to change the direction. So I just say flex direction should be column. And I'll save that. So all the elements will be placed in the center now, but this is not really what I'm looking for. So I think what I need to do is to align the items vertically instead, and then justify content. So probably we need to do that on each container for them to stick to the middle. Okay, so we're wrapping up. I'm just going to adjust a few things and then we can attempt to complete the assignment on our own. So all that's left now is to start the web page. So I'm going to center this because time is not on our side. I'll need to wrap up. So I'm going to edit this so that I can continue from where I left off. So I'm going to center it like this. Right, so you can see this is in the center and all of that. Okay, so it will be our duty to style this. So for this, you need to import another text that's base mono. So I will include all the instructions that are meant to follow. So please, let's anticipate and wait for the assignment. But if you want to practice from scratch, I also upload resource on the MacTechie platform. All right. So I believe we've been able to cover and see the applications of the box model and the Flexbox. So let's conclude. So in conclusion, so matching both the box model for individual element control and Flexbox is efficient for group arrangements. So you can see the way I was arranging things based on my knowledge of Flexbox. I know where to add the margin, I know where to add the padding, I know where to add spacing and all of that, all right? And it gives you the core skills needed to create well-structured, flexible, and visually appealing web layouts. So you can see our website was gradually going from a styleless website to what we have currently. So because it's not even completed yet, that's why it's not so fine. But imagine going from something like this to something like this. So this is much more visually appealing to see than just our random HTML elements. Okay. So our knowledge of box model and Flexbox enables us to achieve that. All right, so they are very indispensable tools. It is essential for a web developer to master the box model and Flexbox. So Flexbox is the most commonly used layout technique. So let's do well to master it. So we have come to the end of today's session. I would like to thank everyone for coming. Do we have any questions? So while I'm expecting our questions, I will hand over to the moderator to handle the question and answer section. Thank you.
Hello everyone, so that was the wonderful session by Mr. Oluwashotun. If you have any questions, kindly drop your questions in the chat for the Zoom and for the YouTube. The attendance has been posted, so everyone should fill in their attendance. Fill in your attendance and drop in your questions in the chat box.
Okay, so while we're still expecting questions, so I'll upload the assignments with the necessary instructions. It'll be a step-by-step thing. So you just read the instructions and then implement on your own. All right, so I'll upload it tonight. So we should all check our MarkTechie platforms. And I've also uploaded some other assignments. So let's do well to check them too. So once you finish the assignment, make sure you put it in the compressed or zip folder. I've also included the link in the resources in case you don't know how to convert or create a compressed zip folder. So you find help in the resources for the assignment. So just go through the resources for the assignments and submit your assignments on the MarkTechie platform in a zipped folder. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so someone is asking how you can access the recorded class for the first three recorded videos for the first three classes.
So the recorded videos will be included in our course content on the MarkTechie. But after every class, the recording is also posted on each and every group. So you can check the groups for past recordings or go straight to the YouTube channel to access the recordings. So, but subsequently, we'll post the recordings, the live session recordings in our course contents on MarkTechie.
Okay, that answers the question. Any other question? Kindly fill in your attendance form. Any other questions before we round up? So due to the lack of questions, I want to believe that everybody understands, or if you do not and you're trying to assimilate everything, you can ask your questions in the next class, maybe. So kindly fill in your attendance. By 11:45, we're going to end the class.
The recording has stopped.
Okay, so we have come to the end of this class. We'll meet again next week, Saturday on the 12th, where you'll be having the CSS Advanced Grid and Responsive Design. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.